Hey there, beautiful souls. Welcome to today's message. And today is one for all of us who can be going through relationship challenges, conflicts, on any level with anyone. Maybe that's somebody that's close to you. Maybe it's having some online debates with strangers. All those different ways in which we can involve ourselves in conflict. Today I want to share with you something that happened in my world just yesterday, that of course when I do these messages they're all coming from my life, from my experience, and then I get kind of these little insights about just reflecting on, you know, how to be my higher self. In today's message it's going to be around conflicts with others, particularly those close to you in my experience, what I'll share with you today. But you know, I really do believe that when we are able to reflect and have these kind of conversations, when we're not triggered, right? When we have our full capacity of mind, our heart and our soul, you know, open and able to kind of determine how we want to show up in the world, rather than in the moment of conflict where we can't always rely on, you know, the aspect of our brain that's engaged to really draw to the forefront like how we actually want to be. So that's what these messages are all about, to get us when we're not triggered and to contemplate how we want to show up in the world so that we can consciously create and deliberately manifest like what we actually want in this lifetime and for the people that we choose ourselves to be. So as you're tuning in, as usual, I always get excited to see who gets to join me live, and definitely where you're tuning in from. I love our global community. So if you feel called to drop me a comment, say hi, let me know where in the world you're tuning in from, and also contribute to this message today. I want to hear your thoughts on what we're talking about. I'd love to hear your experiences. I think many of us are experiencing more conflict in our lives than we have in the past, basically. So, you know, maybe that's true for you, maybe it isn't. But I would love to hear from you guys. So today's message is, do not surrender your view in order to avoid conflict. And instead, I want you to look for acceptance, not approval. All right. So this is something that I've been working on within myself. So over the years, and for those of you who followed some of these messages, you know that I have certain people, particularly who are close to me in a family dynamic, who one person in particular, I should say, who is what I call my beautiful dark guru, all right? And somebody who I love dearly. I know they love me dearly. We're two very, very different people and different ways of viewing the world, and completely opposite world experiences, life experiences, hugely different age differences. Like, we're just almost like chalk and cheese, right? And so at times, you know, in my past, I would definitely opt for creating harmony and subordinating to this person's perspectives and opinions and judgments, and I didn't have enough of a strong enough sense of my own self and my own points of view with anyone really, and in particular with this person as well, to see and feel into what they were saying and feel that might not be true for me, right? And so basically, anyway, it's been a huge growth journey of mine to develop my own sense of self, and particularly around my ability to express truth despite my fear around that triggering conflict, right? And I had opted for approval rather than acceptance of myself as a different person with different perspectives and, you know, a different sense of the world, and just a different being, right? And I feel like a lot of you guys who tune into these messages basically would definitely know that, you know, like, I think you'd be attracted to these messages if you stay tuned to these, for those of you who've been connecting in on these messages for a while now, because we share this love for differences, right? We can innately know that we want to grow, we want to learn, we want to wake up, we don't want to remain blind. And so part of that journey and that experience is hearing from different people's perspectives, right? Completely different variety of teachers and all the different perspectives, so that we don't stay stuck and just enabled with our limited perspective from our limited lens, and instead we get to fast track our evolution and our, basically our expansion by hearing from other people's perspectives and seeing what fits and seeing what doesn't fit, basically, right? And so that's definitely my perspective, and that's why this person that I love in my life, who has been one of my greatest growth inducers, right? Because we're so different. Is basically quite very strong in their own opinions, and they don't share the same value as I do of learning from a vast variety of perspectives, and so that oftentimes leads us into this particular conflict. And basically, like I mentioned, over the years, and I'd love to hear from you guys to see if this is maybe true in your own journey, that we've realized that we don't want to have a conflict, and we know that what somebody is saying that's close to us doesn't really gel with us, but we kind of just go along with it. We kind of just agree, or we kind of just laugh it off, or we don't say much, or whatever it is. But there's a part of it that kind of knows, ugh, that didn't feel real, right? That kind of felt like I was being a bit fake, right? And the more we become aware of our own inner worlds, the more we're just repelled by the feeling of like saying things or not being truthful, subordinating the truth of our internal world to some external source, because we're trying to mitigate against conflict, and we're just trying to create harmony, even if it has to come from a fake place, right? The more that just becomes such a turn-off, to the point where I found myself in communication with this person yesterday, and I just couldn't do what my past self has done. My past self, who would just kind of laugh things off, just kind of dull it down, just kind of discount my own personal experience, feel like, oh, I don't want to go there, it's just going to create some conflict. I felt like I was in a position where the ability to maintain harmony at the expense of my inner truth, it was just like it just wasn't there. Like I didn't have that capacity yesterday. And so what happened as a result was I communicate, and this person has known me since the moment I was born, basically, right? And so basically they've seen me and experienced me, as a certain, somebody who always maintain harmony, always wants to make people feel good about themselves, right? And at the expense of my truth, a lot of my years were doing that, right? And yesterday, it's been a gradual process that I've grown through, but yeah, yesterday just reached a new level in this. And what happened was, we had I just didn't have a filter, basically. Like I was very calm. I wasn't rude. I wasn't any of those things, but I did say when something didn't feel right to me and what my perspective was on that. And I did kind of have a few home truths about acceptance between us, right? Instead of this subordinating to maintain harmony. And what happened as a result was that this person was very emotionally impacted, to the point where there was a lot, they felt attacked because I'd shifted how I'd been, and it was a really interesting experience for me on a number of levels, because one of the things that happened was that I could see this person, almost shaking with their emotion, because I shifted what my role in that system had been over pretty much my whole life, right? And basically as a result, this person expressed they felt really attacked, they were really emotionally impacted, and then I could see kind of what was at play. Like there were things that were being said that my past self would have felt really guilty about, and it would have forced me back in my little subordinating box, basically, to go back into the way things have always been, that would allow this person to feel superior to me or to and in the conversation, and only their opinions mattered, and I was just there to basically agree with them. That's been the role. And because I wasn't, I saw, to be honest, like just a lot of repressed upset, a lot of unhealed wounds emotionally. I could see all of that, and also I witnessed my past self would have fallen into guilt, and instead I didn't do that because I didn't feel guilty, because I knew I didn't do, and I wasn't aggressive, I wasn't reactive, I was just truth, in a very calm, centered place. And so, I could apologize to this person for, anything that I've done to contribute to them feeling that way, and to express more clearly and more lovingly what my intention would be, right? And then it's not necessarily my responsibility for how they respond to that. And gratefully in this situation, things came back into connection, right? And out of the attack mode, or the feeling of attack mode, right? But basically, the main key of this, and I'd love to hear from you guys if this resonates with you, because a lot of times when we experience some sort of conflict with anybody in our lives, a lot of the time we feel really justified in our perspective, right? Because in the words of Ken Wilber, basically everything is true, but it's only partial. So what your perspective is on a situation that you may have a conflict with somebody else, basically you both have some true aspects, but they're only partial. That's the purpose of conflicting with people in our lives, to come into a grander sense of awareness, to see through another lens, because we can only see partially. And so the more we're able to come into those dynamics, and maybe we hit up against one another because we see it just so one way, but the openness and the willingness to actually see and try on another lens is the expansion process, right? That's how we learn, that's how we grow, that's how we're freer. And so basically in that scenario, for me, like what it came down to was my past self used to seek approval so that I could maintain harmony. How do you seek approval from people who aren't open to different perspectives? You just agree with theirs, right? And now, because they approve of their own way of seeing the world, now you get kind of the remnants of this kind of false approval, all right? And that maintains harmony, and you can feel like you're not going to lose the connection. But at the end of the day, you just lost the connection with yourself by doing that. And so instead of seeking approval and trying to justify your side and trying to convince, the unconvincible, a better strategy, and what I spoke about with this person yesterday, was acceptance of our differences. Because if you can't accept one another, you're not in relationship with one another. If you can't be who you are in dynamic with another, like, what's the point of you even being there physically? There's no point, right? Like, what is that reinforcing? Just a fake connection. It's a waste of everybody's time and energy, right? And so just taking that little piece, I hope that that's of value to you guys, to think about the next time you find yourself in some sort of conflict. Just ask yourself, oh, am I going for approval here? And how could I be more accepting instead? How could I nurture this dynamic instead of having to have them approve of me, knowing that they see life and the world through a completely different lens? How about we instead go for acceptance, right? Acceptance of who I am, of who you are, of our differences. And what happens is when we go for acceptance, and we don't need them to come over to our side or us to subordinate to their side in order to maintain connection. Instead, what we do is we opt for acceptance of the differences, and eventually even absolute appreciation of the differences, because it opens up the doorway of this willingness to learn and expand and realize that we have only a partial truth at any one time, and others hold other partial truths, that when we have that openness to come together and try on different perspectives rather than personify one and lock down in it, we actually get to expand ourselves, and expansion is freedom. And one other aspect I just wanted to mention with this before I jump into the comments and have a chat with you guys is the idea of love. Thinking about it as love being an experience of beauty. Okay, so if we want to bring more love into our challenges, into our relationships on whatever level, into those dynamics that are fueled with some conflict at a time, like if we want to bring more love into those dynamics, it's in the recognition of beauty. Okay, and so it's about being in awe of the person in front of you, like how they work so differently to you. They bring this totally different lens to the world. And I heard said today in an incredible podcast that I've totally forgotten the name of, but it was on the Aubrey Marcus podcast that I highly recommend, but I can't give you much information about it right now. I'll shoot you the link in the comments that you can check out. It's totally worth the watch. Talking about so many different aspects of what's going on in the world right now and how to view the world. And I'm sorry, I forget the guy who was being interviewed's name. He was a doctor, and he said that another person is the expression of a soul through a biological veil. And I just thought that was just so beautiful, right? Like if you were, just try this on for size, right? If you, next time you find yourself in a kind of like a little bit of conflict coming up with somebody in your life, I challenge you to stare directly into particularly their left eye. Okay, because the left eye is basically how you can read emotions, the true emotions that nobody can hide behind any sort of veil. If you look into their left eye, you can feel into what emotion is actually true for them. And I invite you to look into the iris of that person's eye and just witness the beauty of it. Like just witness the magic of the physical body, just and look at it like this, that that person is an expression of a soul through a biological veil. I just thought that is just an incredible way of accessing a sense of awe and beauty and remembering that love is an experience of beauty. Okay, and so that's a strategy of accessing more love in those moments and tap into the truth of emotion held in the left eye, right? I think it's a really cool way of getting outside of our egos and connecting in more with a deeper sense of soul and in connection with all others, so that we can expand through one another rather than be in conflict with one another. And don't judge a conflict, right? The conflict's there to wake you up to, hey, there's another partial truth over there that you could see into that could potentially free you and be a gift for you, to not stay stuck in one aspect of seeing anything. All right, and that to me is pure freedom. Okay, so I definitely want to check in with you guys, see who's been able to join me. So please do drop me a comment. And if you do feel that this is a valuable message for anybody in your life, I'd love for you to share it with them. Okay, so let me check in. I've got Sam in the house and Chico, hello to you, and Elf's here, and Graham and Arthur and Aoni and Sam. Cold here in North Wales. 12 degrees. Oh, that is a bit chilly. It's been really hot here on the other side of the globe. Love having you here as usual. And Kayla's here as well. And Elf, good to see you back, my friend. Always a pleasure greeting you on the screen, dear one. Thought-provoking topic for many The art of being disciplined in conflict is a non-event. Most simply fly off the handle in defending their ego rather than actually understanding the other's views. Much love. Absolutely. Such wise words, and always appreciate you sharing them here, my friend. Yeah, absolutely. It is an art, and what a gift to be able to navigate conflict rather than avoiding it and running away from it because you just seek approval and you just want harmony at the expense of what's true for you. You're robbing everybody around you from the gift of sharing your unique partial truth. That, again, coming together with the openness and willingness rather than the identification of, needing other people to approve of your perspective, your partial truth, right? Instead, this acceptance of our differences and this leaning into the openness of waking up to another aspect of truth so that you can be freer and expand to a whole new level, right? So absolutely, I love that, Elf. Thank you so much for sharing. And Henry's here, and Josie, and Sam. Watched The Shack on Netflix. It wasn't what I expected. A bit religious. Oh, I remember that. Yes, I've seen that. A bit religious, but not coming from any denomination. I learned a lot about family members and not to judge them as they had their issues. And I'm not perfect either. Massive learning curve for me today. Lovely to see you live as always, Coach. Always grateful to have you here, Samuel. And I do remember seeing that movie actually a few years ago, I think. And absolutely. Another good one that just popped into mind, kind of on a similar kind of context to kind of open up to more of the spiritual realm, not religious, but spiritual, right? Like, is The Way of the Warrior. Well, what is it called? The Peaceful Warrior. Oh my gosh, guys, help me out. The Way of the Warrior? The Peaceful Warrior? I've got something down there that's by Dan Millman. Oh, help me out, guys, if you can remember what I'm trying to point to, but it's another one kind of like The Shack that teaches us about how we view the world, right? Like, and how we create our own suffering, and to see a grander perspective on ourselves and to treat ourselves with compassion and others with compassion, and to see each other as these other expressions of soul, other expressions of our oneness, in this separate realm that we can learn from, that we can love with, like there's just so much beauty to be awoken with those perspectives. So love it, Sam, and we're all on the journey, my friend. And Arlen's here as well, and Jonathan and Carlos and Bill, hello to you. Grateful to have your approval and hopefully acceptance of this video. I love it. And Graham, good to see you, my friend, from the UK. Vanessa, you can't be all things to all people or you'll lose your individuality. How do you feel for expressing yourself more openly? Oh, thank you, Graham. I appreciate those wise words. Yeah, you know what, like at the time, like I was having a bit of a day yesterday where I felt like I just, when you can get into those kind of states of being, and I was just like, don't mess with me today. It was a little bit like I really don't have that ability to really care so much about how other people being over responsible, right, for how people respond to things that that they might be triggered by. So I kind of already knew yesterday, because this person is somebody that I've had a lot of these experiences with over my whole life. But basically I kind of knew it was coming a little bit, but it did feel just real. It didn't feel energizing, to be honest, because it doesn't necessarily energize me to be in, challenging situations. It's different depending on who you're dealing with, right? Like if you're having one of those challenges with somebody that is on the same page in terms of really wanting to grow and deepen and share similar perspectives, right? Then, or is accepting, then it can be an easier flow. But that's my edge, right? My edge is leaning into the discomfort of, dealing with the conflict that I've previously wanted to avoid. And yeah, it feels freeing. It doesn't feel great when the other person reacts in ways that you can see they're creating more pain and suffering for themselves. But simultaneously, it's another lesson to realize that the only things that we're responsible for are what we think, what we say, what we feel, and what we do, basically, right? So we're not responsible for other people's thinking, what they say, what they feel, and what they do. So there was a lot of lessons and a lot of growth in it, and it was kind of a bit of a celebration for me, a reflection of the growth that I've had. You know, that's the beauty of being presented with more conflicts in our lives as well, to see how we're progressing with that. Because I do believe we have to learn through experience. It's great to have some conversations around stuff, but until we're actually in it, we don't really realize like where we're at with it, you know? And so if we're always avoiding conflict, we don't actually get better at at the art, right? Like how Elf mentioned it as an art. We can't get better at it without practice. So, you know, just we've got to open and, you know, and opt for acceptance over approval. So thank you, Graham. I always appreciate you, my friend. And Simon's in the house as well. Good to see you. So I really hope today's message has served you. So just remember, don't surrender your view to avoid conflict. Look for acceptance, not approval. And remember that love, if we want to bring more love into our dynamics, then basically we need to realize that love is an experience of beauty. So look into that person, find the beauty, find the magnificence that is them, and to get to a place of acceptance of their differences. Eventually it'll turn into an absolute appreciation of the differences, because as you open up to other partial truths and other perspectives, it allows you to expand, and it allows you to access new heights of freedom from over-identification with one-sided perspectives, and gets you, like just to experience life and all that it has to offer at a whole new level of awareness of the beauty within and all around you. Okay, so love it. And Simon, think it was Shambhala, the sacred path of the warrior. No, it wasn't. I'll have to check whatever that is out. The way of the peaceful warrior. No, the way of the warrior. I'll find it out. Dan Millman is he's the author of the book, but then they made a movie out of it as well, and it's like, I really recommend it. The Way of the Peaceful Warrior, I think it is, but I'll put a comment after it, I'll Google it, and I'll put it there. But thank you so much, Simon. I appreciate you for the guess. But that sounds kind of cool too. I'll check it out. So much love for each and every one of you guys. I so appreciate when you can join me live in these messages and contribute to the conversation, and just, show up and contribute who you are here, and your perspectives and your words of wisdom and your questions and all the rest of it. So thank you so much, guys, for showing up, and I can't wait to see you guys very, very soon. So much love.